Hey, Dale.
Hi, Todd. How are you today?
I'm good.
And we're
I'm
talking to
good.
you from Moscow.
Yes, you are.
Oh, that's interesting. I have a few questions about that. I just want to give a brief intro that Todd comes from a military background, also financial background, and uh, you're an author of a couple of very good books, Currency and Sugar, and that you write for the Moscow Times, and you're back and forth between the States and Russia, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm in my girlfriend's flat right now, looking at one of Stalin's towers out the
Wow.
window.
And you tweeted me the other day before we got a pop in the Russian market and ruble, and you wanted to address the fact that since this crisis began, something that you and I talked about, I was making light of it, that I thought Putin would do this because the Russian hockey team lost, and he didn't look happy, and he wasn't going to walk away from the Ukraine. Um, what are you seeing as far as the sanctions? The talk is the sanctions really don't have that kind of bite, and we had a recovery in Russia. Do you think this is just a short-term phenomena, or that we could be looking at something
Yeah,
more significant?
I think this is a dead cat bounce. I mean, there are going to be serious problems with this economy. It's been slowing already. They have not used the oil wealth that they have garnered to modernize their economy. So they're still based on oil in most of their revenues and most of the state revenues. So this is only going to exacerbate that problem, and you're going to have huge capital outflows out of the country. So I think there's a lot of problems that really haven't been thought through from a leadership standpoint here
Okay,
yet.
so leadership mistakes across the globe, Todd. Leadership mistakes, vacuum created by the U.S. Abandoning that role
I
of global leader hegemony, and then miscalculations. He's massing more troops on the border. I've heard that they're going to move because they want a land bridge. So does it look likely?
I think it depends on if he thinks he can get away with it, which I think is highly likely. The longer term concern is the goal to destabilize NATO, and that is a real problem. I mean, if you look at Estonia, which has 40% Russian speakers, if he decides to stir up trouble there and maybe have do the same type of Spetsnaz operation, then you could see a real problem.
Um,
And I don't think our leadership will stand up to that,
yeah, when you
frankly.
bring up NATO, right away what came to my mind was Turkey shooting down the Syrian jet. To me, Turkey equals
Hmm.
NATO. Do you see this
Hmm.
crisis metastasizing? I thought that an unspoken sanction might be for the U.S. to give the green light for our proxies to project power into Syria to cause problems for Putin.
I think we, as you mentioned, have a serious leadership vacuum. I'm actually quite concerned because I don't, the comments he made yesterday were just shocking, saying that, he's not that worried about it. I mean, that means there's a huge green light flashing in the Kremlin, and that Obama is not going to be concerned. And so I think the problems we have on the leadership side are manifesting themselves across the globe, not just in Russia, but in China, in Iran, in Syria, and in many places. And you're right, it's a result of our vacuum created by this, I think, incredibly naive administration we have.
Let me ask you this. Before this Ukrainian crisis and the deterioration of Russian U.S. relationships, how were you treated as a Westerner slash American, and how are you being treated there now?
Well, Moscow's a fantastic city. It's extremely wealthy. There's more billionaires here than anywhere. There's Bentleys and Mercedes and Lexuses all over the highways. It's
Do you
it's a
know any
cradle
oligarchs
of
that are
wealth.
looking to adopt maybe like a grandfather figure?
No, I don't. Sorry, but the Russian people have always treated me very well. I've got American friends here as well as Russians. Since this has all happened, there's been a serious propaganda campaign by the government on TV and et cetera. And I just heard yesterday that they are going to institute educational materials into the schools to give the Russian view of what's happening in Crimea, which they call Crim. There is a huge effort to prop up and to color what is happening in a pro-Russian stance, which is to be expected, I guess. But there has definitely been, I would say, I went out to dinner with some Russian friends the other night, and there was over a bottle of vodka. We discussed Crimea, and it got a little bit heated at times. And I think there's been a lot of nationalistic fervor. But I had a very wise woman tell me the other night that, yes, Russians are happy now, but they're not looking to the future. So I think that has a lot of truth to
How do
it.
you think it begins to play out here, Todd? To me, it sounds like um, what this is only the first salvo. Let me use a baseball metaphor that the move into Crimea is opening day, and we have a long season ahead of us. Is that the way it looks to you?
Yeah, I think I read a column on Zero Hedge yesterday that there will be no, uh, I guess,
Political
what do you call
settlement.
it, détente until Putin's gone. I mean and he could stay there for another 10 years. So I think that will be hard for the West to deal with. But frankly, I'm a little bit worried about my Russian friends because their economy is not going to get any better, and that's not good for anyone.
And turning to Asia, with what's going on here, the Chinese see this vacuum. They want those islands from Japan. Um,
Yeah, they sure do. And look at what's just happened. You've had a country say that because we have historical ties to this region, we're just going to take it militarily. Uh, so think about Taiwan.
right.
Think about I mean, Hong Kong. I mean, there's a lot of examples that can be given as to places which could get very destabilized very quickly and provide problems for us. And again, our military is shrinking. We don't have leadership, and it's scary.
Yeah, you're looking for, and I've interviewed someone who doesn't think it's going to turn into any type of nuclear exchange, but looking for a war that would be comparable to what happened in Vietnam. Can you see that type of conventional conflict happening in Asia or in Europe? Is Asia more likely than Europe?
I would have said that a few weeks ago, but this has just really opened my eyes as to what can happen. I've always kind of wondered what his goals were, and I think he is the new czar. He is the new king, and he will do what he wants, and he's not. No one is going to stop him. So that is deeply disturbing to me, and I hope we don't get any kind of conflict because I don't think we have the leadership and force structure in place to deal with
So
it,
then, how
frankly.
much longer can Israel wait for us to continue to negotiate with Iran? They're buying time. We've loosened some sanctions. I don't believe they're going to give up their nuclear ambitions. What kind of timeline do you think Netanyahu has for being patient? He used a red line and a picture of a bomb in the UN saying that Iran would cross that threshold. That
Hmm.
was months ago. So is that something else that
Yeah.
you're worried about?
Yeah, I think I've written about that extensively. I think that's a huge flashpoint, and I think Israel will do that at some point because they have no choice. Because if there's a nuclear armed Iran, it's just going to be a nuclear weapons arms race in the Middle East. The Saudis are going to get involved. There's rumors that they've already built bombs in Pakistan and can just move them over in 2 or 3 months. So I think that will happen. And frankly, this Crimean situation is going to make that more likely because Russia is not going to be, I guess, involved in that scenario to try and prevent it from happening anymore. They're going to turn their eye, I think.
I heard there's going to be a big announcement in May of a some type of trade deal between China and Russia
Yes,
for their
yes.
natural resources. Do you consider this um, that Russia really doesn't seem concerned about where its stock market is, where its currency is, that they're turning east, and that, at least during the Cold War, China and Russia in some ways were adversaries, although both communist
Yes.
nations, and now it looks like their goals and their alliances are firming up. Do you see that?
Yeah, sure. And it's all over the press here. Yeah, they're going to send their gas. If Western Europe doesn't want it, they'll send it to China. Sure, of course. Although China has its own fracking possibilities to build up their infrastructure. The one thing that we could do to put pressure on Putin would be to export gas, remove the oil export ban, build LNG terminals. A whole variety of things could be done immediately with a pin and a phone, I might add.
That easily. And how long?
Sure.
I've heard it would take a few years for that to be online for us to be able to supply
Yeah,
supply Europe. Is that correct?
sure. 3 to 5 years, but it could be done. And if they, we announced that we approved one LNG terminal out of Oregon, I believe. But if we said we're going to do 20 or 30, that would get the attention of the world, I think.
Well, Todd, I want to thank you for being with us today, and it's interesting to have your perspective being on the ground there in Moscow. A lot of our community is familiar with your book, Currency. Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis of your book, Sugar, and what it's about?
Yeah, sure. I try to write things about subjects that are, one, wildly entertaining that you stay up all night to read, but that have do discuss important subjects. Currency talked about the debt and the national security consequences of that. Sugar, quite presciently, I believe, spoke about energy policy and how that's affecting events around the world. It delves into the history of sugar production, but at the end of the day, sugar is energy, and so it morphs into a discussion of that whole subject in the Middle East and elsewhere. And I have a third novel coming out soon, I hope, called Delta, which deals with why societies fail over time.
Wow. Todd, I'm so glad I met you on Twitter. Thanks for your
Yeah,
thanks for your feedback here, and I guess in our trading we keep one eye on the charts and one eye on the news now.
yeah. There's just not a lot of good fundamentals here. Yes, we're getting a bounce, but I would use that as a way to change your
And what do you
position.
make of the pullback in gold? Buying opportunity?
I think so. The Russians added tons of gold this last month. I think that's I would back the truck up there. That would be my
All right,
suggestion.
Todd. Thanks again, buddy. Be safe and keep in touch with me, my friend.
All right, Dale.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Cheers. Bye.